Welcome to Riks Europe Round Up. My name is Peter Kleppe, and today with Elias Nordgren, I'm going to discuss the topics of Trump's trade war and the new German government. So welcome, Elias.
Thank you, Peter.
It's been quite a week, especially on the markets. So President Trump announces a big bazooka trade war offensive, which led to some kind of a market crash. And then he made some kind of a U-turn after announcing on Twitter, it is a good time to buy. So if you listened to the president, then you would have made a lot of money. 10% in one day. Some people are talking about insider trading, etc. But it was all quite transparent. I don't know to what extent legally we have a problem here in the United States, but this is like only one of the side aspects of all of this. Separately, we see, interestingly, not only stocks crashing, they have crashed again after the bounce. But we see the 30-year rate to borrow, so the cost to borrow for the United States, increasing, which is relatively unusual. Normally, when stocks crash, then bonds do better because people park their money into fixed income. But now, apparently, because of Japan selling U.S. treasuries, not China, which you would think. China putting pressure on the States, but Japan, according to Fox News anyway, then we see this pressure on the dollar and on the borrowing cost of the United States. It's getting more and more expensive for Trump to borrow, to spend, to keep the U.S. military empire. So we're talking about big developments. Some people are hyperboling, others are saying, well, this all will fly over, but a fact is gold is again reaching all-time highs. So much to chew over, right?
Yeah, I think it's all been very interesting to see these developments, as all of these people are really panicking about the stock market. And I mean, the stock market is in some regards, I mean, it is central to our economy and to our, the wealth that we actually have, not just in the West, but in the entire world. But I think fundamentally, Trump is trying to turn the United States from not just being so heavily focused on the service sector of the economy to being an actual industrial powerhouse again. And I think that this is something that the working class is going to be benefiting from this in the long term, obviously. And this means that he has sacrificed the sacred cow of the stock market, which is something that it's very unusual for Western politicians to actually do this. And this is why there's been so much upset in the Western world, and I suppose globally, really, at what is actually happening here. I think the people who are most concerned with whatever Donald Trump is doing, with all of his unpredictability, first raising the tariffs and then, essentially abolishing them to the rest of the world, it's the people who are most concerned about this are not going to be the working class people who essentially elected Donald Trump. It's going to be the class of people who are all about engaging in this like abstract economy, the service sector, the stock trades, the people who get a rise out of the numbers, the graphs going up, the people who Donald Trump depends on fundamentally are actually the working class and the people who are not concerned with these things. And it's a good thing that a politician is willing to sacrifice the sacraments of the Western world by, he's willing to enrage the stock market by engaging what I think can be engaging in what I think can be very lucrative economic policy, where industry is actually going to be returning to the United States.
Well, it's interesting because your argument is also made by Scott Bessent. So he said Wall Street has been enjoying itself for, I think he said 30 years or something. Now it's the turn for Main Street. That's the sort of the phrasing he used. And there's something to be said about the fact that part of the stock market investing world is fake. It's been fueled by easy money, and some of the valuations may be fake. But that's, of course, why we have a market. You know, the market is always a little bit hysteric. But of course, at the end of the day, if the US government is getting trouble to borrow, because not only stocks are crashing, but also interest rates for America to borrow are increasing, then Main Street will also feel the heat, given the importance of the U.S. government also for the American economy. Now, maybe if you take a really, let's say, counterintuitive stance, you may say, well, that's actually a good thing. It's going to shrink the size of government because interest rates going up are making it hard to maintain such a government of monstrous proportions, which is also the case specifically for the American federal government. But then I wanted to maybe go into one thing, which is there's some kind of a unspoken assumption that because of the lack of tariffs, America would have lost a lot of its industry, or Europe for that matter. I don't think that's the case. I don't deny that if you have tariffs, you can temporarily shield certain industries, but of course that comes at a high cost. But I think specifically in Europe and in the United States, the reason why we've been losing so much industry to Asia really is education, policies that were basically hostile to investing, specifically in Europe, but also in the United States. There's been a lot of, let's say, entrepreneurial hostile policies, as opposed to Asian countries where they have gone the other way in the last 30, 40, 50 years. So I would argue that's sort of what we have to look at. And I would say, even if, and I'm not defending tariffs, but even if people are defending tariffs, specific tariffs to shield specific industries, I don't think that's going to work, but fine, let's assume. I think they should not forget to also mention the key reason, the core reason why we have seen so much deindustrialization. There was this hedge fund manager and Ray Dalio, and he basically was commenting in the last few days that in America you have 1 million people that are brilliant, and then let's say 10% of the population living very comfortably. But he mentioned, and this is sadly the truth, I'm afraid, that 60% of the American population, in terms of reading and writing skills, are basically at a very poor level. And that's also what you hear from Germany, for example. German companies setting up shop in China. A very important reason is when they're looking for an engineer, they find one candidate in Germany, they have 1,000 in China. So I'm just saying, regardless on the debate on tariffs, good, bad, I don't think we should lose sight to some of the more fundamental reasons: education, hostility towards private enterprise that has, infiltrated in the West in the last 30, 40, 50 years.
No, I absolutely agree with that. But I don't think that the tariffs are themselves the means by which Donald Trump will restore industry to the United States, but they are a part of his scheme to politically manipulate, well, to get the world to do his bidding, essentially. He's trying to get Europe to agree to a whole lot of policy proposals regarding, for example, the abolition of DEI, and try to eradicate woke policies, which is also very anti-entrepreneurial, as one can imagine, from Europe. And that this benefits the United States, it benefits Europe. So I think this is a net economic positive for us in the long run. Now, as for other things, such as making the United States more attractive for entrepreneurial establishments, such as, for example, as you mentioned, like raising maybe the educational level of Americans, or raising the educational level of Europeans, and making sure that it makes sense for a company to invest and build factories in Europe and the United States. I think he's not opposed to doing that at all. That's probably also what he's trying to do to accomplish it long term. But the tariffs are, on their part, at least, this is part of his political scheme to try to wrestle control of the world again. He's trying to show the world that the United States is not, you can't just play around with the United States anymore. They're not going to be manipulated anymore. That's the main signal that we're getting from this, is my impression.
All right, let's move to the heart of Europe, Germany, the motor behind the European economy. Germany has a new government led by a nominally conservative Friedrich Merz. his CDU-CSU has just reached a coalition deal with German Social Democrats that still have 15% of the vote, bizarrely, despite their mismanagement of Germany. So, what to think about this? Have you looked at the deal?
Yeah, I mean, some details of the deal were leaked beforehand, I believe, and there were a lot of clauses on immigration. For example, that they would make it easier for migrants to get a German citizenship, a terrible idea, and also to essentially grant an amnesty to illegal migrants to some extent. Now, I don't actually know to what extent these will be implemented or whether to what extent these are part of the actual government agreement in and of itself. But there's a lot of ideas floating around that Germany still needs to be a multicultural, a very globalistic type of country, and that's the general direction that I believe that the government is veering in. Also, of course, we're also getting the very worrying clause about making lies illegal, essentially making it illegal to deliberately tell a lie in a public forum, for example. And Germany already has draconian censorship with regards to you can't insult a politician, for example, on social media. That will get you arrested. So this is a country that fails to live up to basic standard freedom of speech as we understand it as we normally would understand it in Western Europe. So this is just that the Christian Democrats are siding with the Social Democrats to implement what the German regime sort of has been doing to Germany for the past decades. This is he's letting down all the voters who voted for the Christian Democrats, believing that they would finally get some sort of responsible government back to Germany again, which it has been lacking for the past couple of decades. And it is a terrible development because it will affect the entirety of the EU. I think the only positive from this is that the AfD is now soaring in the polls because of all of these letdowns by the Christian Democrats, who are failing to uphold even the most basic of things, such as maybe we should prevent illegal immigration. He's not really taking any steps towards realizing that promise either.
Yeah. Also, I couldn't find much in terms of big policy changes when it comes to immigration. It looks like indeed the Social Democrats have been blocking any attempt, even if there was any attempt to do that. Also, in the economy, Merz is a conservative. He has completely abandoned his promise not to fuel Germany's debt levels. They're going to spend, if I understood well, up to 1 trillion into. I mean, some of it will be good, no doubt. Germany's infrastructure is really poor. But then obviously they should then take that money from the welfare state, which of course they're not doing. They just let the grandchildren pay the bill and forget the lessons of the Weimar Republic and the hyperinflation that then destabilized German society so badly. So, I mean, also what you mentioned is crazy. Like to make lying illegal or something, it's not even clear what exactly they will do. But everybody's probably thinking, okay, this is going to get quite a few politicians in trouble as well. And then I saw these stories coming out of Germany, some AfD-friendly publication called Deutschland Kurier. The editor-in-chief has just been convicted to a prison sentence. Thankfully, provisional, so he won't actually have to go to jail. But if he does anything again, he will have to. And what was his crime? He photoshopped the German Justice Minister, Nancy Faeser, and she was holding a placard, and he photoshopped the words "I hate free speech" on this placard. And Nancy was so angry that she sued him for this, which I think is already crazy. I mean, come on, like if you're a politician. But then to add insult to injury, the court actually sided with her. And that's the same court that also went after, I don't know the details about this, but some German pensioner that called the German economy minister, the green economy minister, an idiot, quote unquote. I mean, look, and this is Germany where you have a rising crime levels. Clearly the courts or the prosecutors don't know their priorities. I think, especially Nancy Faeser going after this. I think, you know, in some countries you can get a fine for this, for overburdening the justice system. I think she should have been receiving a fine for overburdening the justice system. It's completely unacceptable. And look, whatever we think, if you look at the opinion polls, like you mentioned already, Merz has lost a lot of popularity. There was an opinion poll just out showing that the AfD is bigger than the CDU-CSU. So not only bigger than the CDU, but also than the CSU with the CDU together, the CSU from Bavaria, and this is the first time, and it just shows you that German people are disappointed. That I don't think they're asking for a revolution. They're simply asking for more conservative policies, more firm migration policies to be enacted, and instead they get business as usual.
Yeah, and this is why Donald Trump is enacting tariffs on Europe. He's punishing Europe because of these insane politicians that we keep electing, and the insane regime that just never seems to let go of its grip on Germany in particular. But many other European nations are also of the same stock, essentially, with regards to very anti-democratic, essentially, major parties that just continue to grapple onto power. And I think it's very interesting that with regards to like the economic policy, for example, the debt brake that the German constitution actually has codified, that they have made amendments to this to allow them to borrow this 1 trillion euro. I mean, this is a letdown of a catastrophic actually a pretty catastrophic level, because you would expect at the very least a center-right party like the Christian Democrats to uphold some sort of economic responsibility, some sort of fiscal conservatism, right? They can't even do that. Like, okay, sure, they're gonna keep promoting mass migration, they're gonna keep promoting this, like the globalization of Germany. Fine, whatever, they're gonna do that. That's just what that's just what they're here for. But they can't even do a simple thing such as maintaining some sort of decency in like in public finances. There's no surprise at all that they're hemorrhaging voters to AfD, no less. And as you said, I mean, the AfD is larger than the CSU in Bavaria. That's a very telltale sign, I think, of what actually to expect from this government. This is going to further drive Germany and Europe as a whole into a deeper crisis, is my firm opinion. And we're going to have to wait for, 5 more years until the next election. It's going to be a wild ride.
Absolutely. Well, with that, I think we can conclude. So thank you very much, Elias Nordgren, and thank you for our viewers for watching Riks Europe.
Thank you, Peter.